2021 work session and board meeting of the MARTA Board of Directors. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes, good morning, afternoon.
Good
morning.
afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good morning.
Hi, everyone. At this time, I would ask Ms. Huff to please call the roll.
Roberta Abdul Salam,
Present.
Robbie Ash, Stacy Blakely,
Present.
Jim Durrett,
Present.
William Floyd,
I'm here.
Roderick Frierson,
Present.
Brian Glover, Frida Hardage,
Present.
Russell McMurray,
Present.
Al Pond,
Present.
Catherine Powers, Rita Scott,
Present.
Reginald Snyder,
Present.
Christopher Tomlinson,
Present.
Thomas Worthy. There are 11 board members present.
Thank you, Ms. Huff. At this time, I will entertain a motion for the approval of the March 11th, 2020 work session minutes.
I approve. This is Hardage.
Thank
This is
you.
Rod Frierson, I second.
Thank you, Mr. Frierson, Ms. Hardage. Are there any no votes or any abstentions for the approval of the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes of the March 11th, 2021 work session is approved. Next on the agenda, we have the chair's report, and actually, I think Mr. Parker, under the general manager CEO report, will cover most of what I think is important for MARTA. So I'm going to defer to Mr. Parker.
Thank you, Chairwoman Scott. I have several items that I want to present to the board, and a few of my colleagues will assist me. And then I will give a summary of all of the upcoming events and meetings that will be happening between now and the next board meeting. If you could bring up the next slide. So I'm going to start out with an update on our 2021 legislative session. As we all know, the legislative session has ended, and now we're waiting for the governor to review and ultimately sign into law the bills that have passed. I think that as we've been keeping you up to date throughout the session, Colleen Kiernan has done a fantastic job. She is having a well-deserved week off, hiking somewhere in the middle of this great country. So I'm certain that she is not listening to the board meeting, but I do want to express my thanks to her in particular. And if she was not on vacation, she would be doing this presentation because she's done such a great job supporting us. But Colleen, while she's been a huge asset, I think that there's a whole lot of recognition to go around. And we do want to specifically thank Chairwoman Scott for your support during the legislative session and helping us advance this, as well as Chairman Ash, who leads our external committees group, and he's been a huge asset to us. We have a great team under Melissa Molinax, and we really had, I think, one of the best legislative sessions. So next slide, I'll bring you an update as to where we are. I'm going to talk about these things a little different in the different order. We're talking about House Bill 511. First, I think we all remember that back in November, the voters of Georgia passed a constitutional amendment which required a supermajority that successfully passed. And this allowed the General Assembly with a 2/3 vote to create several trust funds for fees that are collected. The one that is sort of the poster child for fees being collected that I think we'll all remember is the used tire disposal fee, where that money I think has historically not been invested in cleaning up of used tire, but used for other sources. So the constitutional amendment has allowed the General Assembly, with some limitations, to create several trust funds. We were able to work with the General Assembly and the Governor's Office to include in House Bill 511 the creation of the Georgia Transit Trust Fund, and this utilizes the fee for hired transit, the Uber and Lyft fee that was established by House Bill 105 last year, which creates a 50-cent and for shared rides and $1 for other rides on Uber and Lyft. The fiscal note last year, before we knew what COVID-19 was, estimated that the collections would be starting out at about $40 million a year. So House Bill 511 did pass successfully, and as I said, it did require a 2/3 majority. And now we have set up a constitutional amendment, similar to where the GDOT and the gasoline excise tax is constitutionally protected from being spent on anything else. So this gives us an ongoing opportunity to work with the Governor's Office and the General Assembly to get into the Governor's budget projects, and they are limited to transit capital projects. I think we're well positioned going forward to advocate for an investment in MARTA. We've laid out to you in our past our strategy of working hard to make sure that we're aligning economic development along with transit investment. And that leads me to the Bankhead Extension Program. I think, as we all know, the City of Atlanta, in their historic half-cent sales tax to invest in the City of Atlanta, prioritize monies for expansion of Bankhead Station that not only improves the capacity but also makes some improvements to the station. We'll be able to run full-service trains here, ultimately be able to run better service in the core of the East-West line with that extension of the platform. And it also tees us up for a TOD at this site, and we're working with our TOD group to determine what the best way to do that is. We're looking at some potential zoning improvements that we may need to request in order to facilitate that. So as we were advancing that project, we saw an opportunity to align ourselves with the state's desire around economic development. We did lay out a vision for the East-West line from Bankhead all the way out to Kensington Station for future investment. The fact that Microsoft is investing in an adjacent parcel, a significant investment to develop a campus there, created an opportunity that the General Assembly and the Governor's Office have been supportive of, and is ultimately in the budget now that the legislature approved and awaits the Governor's review and his approval. I will mention just that the money that was allocated, couple of things. One is that normally the state prefers to have a whole year of collection before they would allocate money like this. We haven't had quite a full year of collections. And then the other requirement that we have is the money does need to flow through the state, and the way that the budget allows that to flow through is GDOT. So ultimately, the money would flow to GDOT, and we would need to enter into an agreement with GDOT to actually receive that money. So we look forward to the governor's review and signing of that budget into law, so that we can work to access the money for that important investment at Bankhead Station. I think this is really 511 creates this long-term opportunity for us to really do some, significant investment in projects along the MARTA rail system. And we believe that aligning economic development and transit investment is a great way to, to capitalize on the state's priorities and ultimately bring forth more money through this Georgia Transit Trust Fund. So a real historic measure. Next slide. You can see some headlines of what's happened. I've gotten a lot of feedback from my colleagues around the country when they see these headlines about what's going on here. And I think that both 511 in particular, creating the trust fund, and then the governor's budget providing at least the down payment on a long-term funding mechanism for future investment in MARTA. So we're really excited about that. It's been a significant effort. A lot of hands went into it, and I appreciate everyone's effort around that. So this is my summary on the legislative session, and we look forward to just a continued working with our jurisdictions to identify these, these best areas to align economic development and our transit investment, and then ultimately work with the state to make sure that we are getting the money ultimately through GDOT to make sure this investment happens. So, any questions on this legislative session, and I think the historic success that we've had. All right. The next item that I'm going to cover will be the bus service restoration plan. Next slide. I just wanted to bring everyone up to date on where we are with our communications plan. As you know, on Saturday, April 24th, we will be restoring all of our bus routes. Before I get to that, I do want to sort of just provide some context about something that a few of the board members have asked me about, and that's and we've talked about this in the past, and I just want to remind everyone. So normally when we make any significant changes to our bus service, the FTA requires, and it's a best practice, to consider how service changes would affect minority and low-income populations. And under normal circumstances, we would conduct that review on Title VI service equity methodology, which is laid out by the FTA. The FTA recognized, as we did, that the impact of COVID-19 was extraordinary, and they did not require transit agencies to perform this required Title VI service equity analysis. But we recognized that there was a need to do that anyways, and Paula and the DEO group performed this analysis last September to look at how our essential bus service impacted vulnerable populations. And as we had said back then, that the changes in the service, the reductions in service, did not have a impact that reached any threshold. In fact, the access to the vulnerable populations, which the FTA considers both majority minority areas as well as low income areas, actually improved with our essential bus service, and that's so the percentage of groups that we were serving in our service area actually improved marginally. There was no requirement by the FTA for us to submit that, although if we had decided to extend our, if we needed to extend our essential service beyond 1 year, we would have been required to submit this analysis to the FTA. I'm certain that had we been required to submit it to the FTA, they would have accepted our analysis and that we would have been able to continue to implement the essential service based on our Title VI analysis. Luckily, we did not get to that point, and that's what I want to review with the board right now. So we are, as I said a moment ago, preparing ourselves to restore all of our bus routes on April 24th. So next slide. And you know, a lot of activity goes into that. And so what I want to talk about here is our public outreach efforts that we have done, because clearly there's a whole lot of work internally that needs to get done, from developing schedules, having operators pick their work, preparing the bus stop signs that have been temporarily taken out of service. So there's a whole lot of work that needs to be done, important work that needs to get done, and work that's being done very efficiently. But more importantly, how we make sure that our outreach and our communication efforts are implemented to get the word out to our customers is really the most important thing that we're doing. So in front of you on this slide is an overview of the whole variety of efforts, whether it's advertising, printed collateral, digital social media, some print advertising, and also outreach to with elected officials, as well as utilizing our Nextdoor, the app Nextdoor, and stakeholder notifications. So hop to the next slide, please. This really all started. This outreach effort has all started on April 2nd with our press release, and we quickly moved into implementing a whole lot of efforts. Clearly, the reason that we're able to restore this service is around our Clean Breathe Easy campaign, and we are putting out multi-language rider alerts to our customers, letting them know, most importantly, about this, that their safety remains our top priority, that there's some very specific and impactful things that we have done. And really, if you look at these bullets, and then if you were to look at what, you know, Delta Airlines has just recently announced as they're putting their middle seats back in service shortly. In fact, I think they did that to some degree over the Easter weekend. Really, it aligns well, the efforts that we're doing, the bipolar ionization and the fresh air on our trains, on our buses, excuse me, as well as the air filters and a whole lot of other efforts that we've talked about multiple times. So we're making sure that our customers hear this message, they understand clearly that we've prepared a safe and sustainable environment for their safety. And most importantly, we're continuing the message around requirements of masks. So next slide, please. So that's really an overview of what we're doing. It's pretty substantial. We've been getting a lot of great press over the information. Heard a radio spot this morning of an interview. We've gotten a lot of print media inquiries and good stories around what we're doing. We've got a very strong campaign that's going on, and I just wanted to make sure and assure the board that not only are we concerned about delivering the service, the quality service that we're preparing for on April 24th, but we're also making sure that the message that we're laying out to our customers is one to ensure that their personal safety is paramount to us, that they understand the things that we have done to create that safe environment that we need, which allows us to have more people on our buses and ultimately restore the service that we've heard a whole lot of feedback around the needs for restoring the service. So just want to leave it there and see if anyone has any questions about what we're doing. And Melissa, anything to add? Melissa's team has done a tremendous job in making sure that we're getting the message out around this.
Jeff, I'll just add that we've reached the elected officials. They're aware of it. They're pushing it out through their constituency relation approaches on social and emails to folks. So, and we're seeing a lot of positive traffic on Twitter and Facebook about this. So I know that people know it's coming.
All right. If there aren't any questions, we'll move on to the next slide, please. Raj, if you could give the board sort of an update around the FY22 operating budget, some highlights around what is in front of us. So Raj, are you? I know you're there. I saw you.
I'm here.
Great.
Okay.
The floor is yours.
Thank you, Jeff, and good afternoon, Chair Scott and other members of the board. If you can go to the next slide, please. We're still in the midst of developing our fiscal year 22 budget, so I'll give a brief overview of the framework for the budget, some of the key assumptions and timelines. First, our budget does support MARTA's 4 strategic priorities, which are listed on the slide. I'm not going to read all of that. And secondly, we are using the latest or the most current sales tax forecast we received from Georgia State University. Actually, the forecast is very positive. They are forecasting a growth of 3.2% for sales taxes in fiscal year 22, and their forecast for fiscal year 23 is actually twice that, almost 7.8%, which is very, very good. But on the fare revenues, the outlook is not all that rosy. Although ridership and fare revenues are slowly improving, they're still depressed from pre-COVID levels. So what we are assuming for fiscal year 22 is 60.3 million in fare revenues, which is up slightly less than half of what we received in fiscal year 19. That's the first full fiscal year before COVID, but definitely better than what we expect to receive this year, which is about 44 million. And the budget also assumes an average wage increase of 3% for non-represented employees. And it also assumes whatever is the contractually agreed upon wage increase for represented employees. Just for context, they did receive their wage increase 2 months ago in February. That was 3%, and that is baked into the budget for 22. And the third of the assumption is that the CARES Act 2 or the CRISA funding, all of the 33.5 million, we are applying that for capital budget because we do not need any for operations. And the third stimulus funding, which is the American Rescue Plan funding of roughly about $284 million, over 70% of that will be used for capital, and the remaining for operating budget over the next 2 fiscal years, that's 22 and 23. So in summary, we do expect the fiscal year 22 operating budget to be at or below the fiscal year 21 operating budget levels, which is good news, which means we are trying to hold the line on our expenditures without compromising safety, security, or service. We can move to the next slide, please. Here are some of the key milestones remaining. We expect to complete or finalize the budget by April 23rd, and we'll brief the board at the special board meeting on May 5th on our operating and capital budgets for fiscal year 22, and followed by public hearings on May 10th and 11th. Now, they'll be virtual, of course, because we're still in the midst of the pandemic. the hearings will be a little bit different than what we have done in the past. In other words, we're not just going to read from a script. It'll be a little bit more interesting, as interesting as a budget presentation could be. We'll make it, and we hope to make it a little bit more interactive with charts, graphs, clearly depicting the sources of revenue for operations and what we propose to spend them on. As well as on the capital budget, we plan on showing the types of investments we are making. When I say types, whether it's on rolling stock or stations or other facilities, passenger facilities, and again, based on the type of expenditures, whether it's safety related, state of good repair, or expansion. So it'll be a lot more robust information we want to provide. Hopefully get some good feedback on that. And we will also provide all of the funding sources associated with our expenditures. Followed by, on May 27th, we'll present the budget resolution to the Business Management Committee, followed by presentation to the full board on June 10th for adopting the fiscal year 22 operating and capital budgets. Next slide, please. That concludes my brief presentation on the fiscal year 22 budget. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
So this is Roberta. I do have a question, if it's all right, Madam Chair.
Yes, Ms. Abdul Salam.
Raj, what is the timeline for our jurisdictions being able to review the budgets? Is that going to be at an interim part before we in the board see it, or will it be at the same time?
It will be before the final adoption by the board on June 10th.
Before the
Roberta,
final.
this is Melissa. I'll jump in. We have the second quarter jurisdictional briefings beginning in May, and we will at that point be sharing the budgets then with the jurisdictions. And all of them will have had a chance to see it and weigh in before the final June vote.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Madam Chair, Al Pond, I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Pond, please go ahead.
Raj, go back the split with the 84 million and the 200 million. I didn't quite understand the basis for that, for the CARES.
Okay. If you can move the slide back to one more. Okay. American Rescue Plan, which was passed last month, MARTA expects to get $284 million from that, which can be used for either qualifying operating expenditures or capital expenditures. So the plan now is to use substantially all of it, or about over 70% of that for capital budget purposes. And the remaining 84 we plan on using for operating budgets in fiscal years 22 and 23.
Okay, I understand it now. So it isn't split 50-50. The 70% is going to capital.
That is correct, because there was really no need for that. We did receive substantial amount of funding from the CARES Act 1, roughly about $298 million, and majority of that was used for operations. We still have some left, which we would use for next year. So there is no need to use the third Stimulus Act fund in any substantive amount for operations.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Raj, this is Chris Tomlinson.
Hi, Chris, go ahead.
Thank you. Two questions. Well, one, just back to Roberta's first question. So you said the timing is you're going to have the jurisdictional meetings. I get that they're before June, but prior to the public hearings, in case the jurisdictions have any questions or proposed changes. Just what's the timing of those jurisdictional updates and the public hearings?
Chris, this is Melissa. One of the meetings is before the public hearings on the budget, and the rest are after, but before the vote. So we take all of the feedback in before we bring it back to the board. But we weren't trying to have the jurisdictional folks weigh in before the public hearings. If the board feels that that's the wrong approach, we can certainly adjust it. But
Right. And then the second question I had was on the last thing you were saying about the ARP funds versus because I know you'd shown on some budget slides before where the other CARES and CRISA funds, I thought, were covering some of the operational shortfalls that you projected for the next couple of fiscal years. So that the 84 million you're saying is being applied to operations in which year?
Actually, if we can go back to that slide, I will explain all three fundings. Okay. What's not on the slide is the first installment of funding we got on the CARES Act. That was 298 million. That was and will be used over 3 fiscal years. Some of it was used in 20, some in 21, and some in 22. The second installment, which is on the slide there, the CRISA funding of 33.5, all of that would be applied to the capital budget. None of that would be used for operations. And the third installment is the American Rescue Plan funding of 284. The plan now is to use over 70% of that for capital budget and about 84 for operating budgets, covering fiscal years 22, a portion of fiscal year 22's budget, and a portion of fiscal year 23 budget. Does that answer your question, or?
Yeah, I can follow up offline. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Madam Chair, it's Bill Floyd. I have a quick question, please.
Yes, Mr. Floyd.
Yeah, Roger, if you mentioned this, I apologize for missing it, but what are the sales tax forecasts for on March 1st, 2021? What is that forecast from GSU amount?
I'll give you the dollar amount as well as the percentage growth. For fiscal year 22, the total estimated sales tax receipts are about 557.8 million, and that represents a growth of 3.2% from fiscal year 21. And for fiscal year 23, it is expected to be about 601 million, or a 7.8% growth over fiscal year 22.
Good. Thank you.
Jeff?
I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was on mute. Any other questions, Madam Chair? Should we move on to our final item?
I think we should.
All right, Melissa's going to present an update on where we are with some changes to our in-person board meetings and the environment that we've created and you know, the realities of a potential transition. So, Melissa.
Thank you, Jeff. IT, could you guys flip to the next slide, please? So this is really a conversation about what's coming for all of us as the COVID infections decrease and vaccinations increase. Right now, Governor Kemp's public health state of emergency has been extended to April 30th. He has been extending those usually right up on the deadline of when it's about to expire. So we don't know right now if he will extend it beyond April 30th. But if he doesn't, then we are back to the standard open meetings laws that require our board meetings and public hearings to be held in person. So just sort of putting this out there for you guys so that you're aware and thinking about what's coming. If we could skip to the next slide, please. There was a legislation passed this session that the governor hasn't signed yet, but no reason to believe that he won't sign it. But this bill, House Bill 98, allows for states and cities and authorities to declare their own emergencies that would then allow them to have teleconference or virtual meetings. This is the entire bill here, so you can see it. What if this is signed into law before May 1st, then our May meetings could be impacted by this. I know Liz is on the call, and I think we'll want to weigh in on this. What this requires is if we declare our own emergency and move to have a virtual meeting, we have to allow the public to weigh in a different way than we have been doing over this last year, which is we've been, of course, live streaming on YouTube, and people have seen it, have been posting questions and comments that we've gotten back to them on. But and then public comment has been submitted beforehand and read, but that's not, that's not the live interaction that this bill would require. So put this out there to say this is also coming and would impact how we hold our meetings. I'll say, and I think this is maybe also where Liz wants to jump in, we're also monitoring very closely what the city of Atlanta and Clayton County and DeKalb County, Fulton County are doing with their meetings. Clayton, well, they're all in various states, mostly still virtual. And so it's a moving target is really the point. And this legislation here would be hard to say what we would deem an emergency condition enough to not have a public meeting. Liz, is there anything else you want to say here?
No, Melissa, I think you summed it up really nicely. It does give us some leeway, but again, I think that the justification for us to have declare emergency conditions if all of our jurisdictions as well as the state have ended them would be a pretty high hurdle to overcome.
Yeah. All right, next slide, please. So these are the May meetings that I just want to draw your attention to. The very first one is, of course, May 5th, our board budget briefing that right now, Jeff mentioned in his opening about the dates, and you see it on the agenda calendar. All of these will either be virtual or in person, depending on what happens. We're prepared to move quickly either way on May 1st once we see what the governor's going to do. The budget public hearings, last year we had them in the atrium, and they were sort of professionally produced. We have all those vendors lined up again. But if they have to be in person, then we'll just actually hold them in the atrium with social distancing and mask requirements. And then we will decide where else to go hold them publicly. Typically it's the Decatur Library and, at a jurisdictional meeting. So those still to see. Our board meeting is on May 13th, and then our committee meetings are on May 27th. I think that what's going to happen, that this will sort of all be clearer in June and the rest of the year going forward. Suspect we'll all be back in person. Next slide, please. IT, could you guys go to there we go. So what we wanted to show you is what we've done in the boardroom. I think you'll see that the whole 6th floor will look different when you're back in the building. We've been doing a lot of work while folks have been gone. And I'm not going to go over all of those. We've talked about those previously with the ionization filters and the HVAC upgrades. But to the boardroom specifically, we have these acrylic partitions between each board member. You can't see it from the picture, but they go all the way to the floor. They're very sturdy and stable. There are new microphones for everybody. We will have new microband mouse pads, and we have antimicrobial coverings on all the high touch areas. I don't know if you'll remember, but the pictures behind you, we have all new pictures. Also, it's brighter, and we're trying to make you guys happy to come back into the building, which I suspect many folks have gotten used to the virtual lifestyle. Overall in the boardroom, we have new hardware and AV equipment, which we've also presented previously. We have finalized and procured the new board voting software. It may not be up and ready for our first meetings because of the vendor sort of transition, but that's coming. And then we also have new cameras in the boardroom to allow live streaming of in-person meetings on YouTube. We have cameras set up now so that it captures both the person speaking at the podium and the board members in the horseshoe. So when we do come back, we certainly will have a different public engagement process, right? We'll have fewer chairs in the room, but we're going to make it possible for people to view it live and react live to the in-person meetings. So that's the presentation. Happy to take any questions, and hopefully Liz can answer them.
Melissa, it's Bill Floyd. A quick question concerning what's a public meeting and what's not. Has that ever been defined? For instance, I'm thinking of a budget meeting where there's one or two board members there. I mean, is there a list of what the public meetings are, and is there a list of meetings that we could have virtually that are maybe not public meetings, or how is that decided?
Well, there definitely is there's a detailed breakdown on what's considered a public meeting and through the Open Meetings Act. And I think I bet Mr. Griffin would love for me to hear this, but I think ACCG has put the best book together on that, which we can send around to everybody, but also sort of excerpt. Our budget hearings are in the MARTA Act. They're prescribed there. And so, Liz, they are from the MARTA Act prescribed to be virtual, I mean, in person, right? Accepting this
Yes,
emergency that we're in.
Yes. And they are specifically, public hearings are also specifically called out in that new legislation as requiring in-person participation.
Yeah.
Hi, Liz.
Yes.
I have a question. And I would ask Colleen, but she's not here and I haven't had an opportunity to check yet. And of course, Jeff covered the bus service restoration. Internally in the work environment, how does or has the governor signed HB 112?
I'm sorry, was it how has the governor signed HB 112 was your question?
Correct. Yes.
And I actually would have to check on that.
Okay, great. I'm sorry. I wondered
we'll get right back with you about that.
I wondered how that would internally affect the internal operations within the building, or
this is the one about liability claims.
Yes. Original sunset was 7/21, but HB 112 extended to 8/22, and I don't know. I haven't verified whether or not the governor has actually signed that bill. But we can check. It's no problem. I can find that out later.
I'll check on that.
That on this legislation, most private sector businesses posted the notice that was included in this original bill, Chairman Scott, that said essentially that you can't hold us liable for entering these premises.
Right.
MARTA we didn't post that.
Right. I understand. I just wonder if the bill itself, which would extend which would not extend the liability. And so I wondered if we had any update on that, but that's something I can verify. Thank you.
Okay. We'll follow up. Thank you.
Hi, Melissa. This is Rod Frierson.
Yes.
Question. plans for the public to participate if there's an overflow? Are they going to be able to? I know you said there's limited space what we have now, so all that will flow into some other space.
Right. So what we're going to do is there is overflow space, which is down below the bid room, but it also, has a maximum capacity in a socially distanced world of about 25. But what we're going to do is we're going to really push out that there are ways that you can engage without having to be here in person. So hopefully people will take that opportunity. Secondly, in the board vestibule area, that area has been redone, and we're going to have staffed iPads there so that when folks come in, instead of having to write their comment on paper, they can actually enter their comment there, so they can make their comment and then can, if they want to go watch it in the atrium, or it will also be live streaming on the atrium, which is separate from the bid room, right? So we'll have multiple overflow areas, but also multiple ways for them to make their comment in a way that the board can hear before they take any action on anything.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's helpful.
Mhm.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question? It's Roberta.
Yes, Vice Chair.
Yes, Melissa,
Yes, ma'am.
will the board members be provided hard copies of the budget prior to the May 5th briefing
Oh, yes.
so that we can review and have our questions ready?
Yes,
if any?
ma'am.
And second question is, will your live streaming back in the boardroom, once we're in person again, you will stream all of the meetings, including committee meetings?
Yes,
Is that
ma'am.
what you're saying? Okay.
Mhm.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, Melissa. I guess I have one more question.
Okay.
Around the the in-person meeting and access to the public, has anyone determined or made sure that we also, when you mentioned iPad, it made me think of some of the problems that a lot of seniors had in registering for even the COVID vaccination? Are we going to make sure that any seniors that aren't computer savvy, or that they'll have the ability to still ask their questions? I'm sorry.
Yes. So, absolutely. And the way that we think the best way to do that is to, we have to have this phone number that's set up, and pushing that out again through our elected officials, through our senior center and other partnerships that we have, this phone number for people to call in and leave a message. That's easy. The iPad in the vestibule really is a way for people who have already decided to come down, who are in the building, but there's not space in any of the overflows, that they want to leave a comment and they want it heard for that message, for that board meeting, for that to be taken and registered right away. So that in-person iPad thing is really just to help those folks who have already made the effort to come into the building. But
Right, but I'm
yeah.
concerned if any of those are seniors as well.
Well, so if those are seniors, there's going to be a staff person there who will help them do it. So
Okay, great.
those iPads will be staffed, and there'll be more than one. There'll be multiple.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure, or be
Yeah.
able to elaborate, that our seniors are being supported who may or may not have questions as well.
Yes. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay.
Jeff?
Jeff, you're muted if you're talking.
Hello?
There we go. Sorry. That concludes the presentations. I do want to go over our upcoming events and significant meetings. The list is long. I will read through them. We have already gone over some of them in both in Melissa and Raj and my presentations, but just to summarize them, the MARTA board committee meetings for planning and capital programs, ops and safety, and business management, which will be virtual because it's still within the governor's time frame will be on April 29th at 9:30 a.m. The board budget briefing, which is right now proposed to be virtual, but we just heard that discussion from Melissa, is scheduled for Wednesday, May 5th at 10 a.m. The next Rider Advisory Council meeting, which will plan on being virtual, is May 5th at 6:30 p.m. As you had heard in Raj's presentation, we do have some budget public hearings Monday, May 10th at 11 a.m. and Tuesday, May 11th at 6:30 p.m. The MAC meeting, the MARTA Accessibility Committee, which is planned on being virtual at this time, is Tuesday, May 11th at 10 a.m. And finally, the next MARTA Board of Directors work session and board meeting, which could potentially be in person, is Thursday, May 13th at 12 noon. And that concludes my general manager's report. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks to everyone. At this time, we will reconvene at 1:30 for our board meeting.
All right. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Jeff or Melissa, are you there? Rita, did you hear me?
I could hear you. Yes.
Okay.
Jim, yes, I heard you.
Okay. I have an app on my phone called Citizen, and it just notified me that there's a small fire on the Lenox MARTA station track. And I just was hoping we might be able to get a report on that.
Thank you.
Which station did you say, Jim?
Lenox.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is 1:30 p.m. and at this time we will call to order the MARTA Board of Directors meeting. And we're going to ask Ms. Huff to please call the roll.
Roberta Abdul Salam,
Present.
Robbie Ash, Stacy Blakely,
Present.
Jim Durrett,
Present.
William Floyd,
I'm here.
Roderick Frierson,
Present.
Ryan Glover, Frida Hardage,
Present.
Russell McMurray,
I'm present.
Al Pond,
Present.
Catherine Powers,
Present.
Rita Scott,
Present.
Reginald Snyder,
Present.
Christopher Tomlinson,
Here.
Thomas Worthy.
Present.
There are 13 board members present.
Thank you, Ms. Huff. At this time, are there any changes to the agenda? No? I would ask if we could possibly receive a quick comment from Mr. Durrett on the information he just received.
Oh,
Yeah,
I just,
this is,
an app of mine indicated that there's a small fire on the MARTA tracks at the Lenox station, and I just wondered if anybody from MARTA could give an update if they are able.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
Can you, it's Collie, can you hear me okay?
I hear you fine.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, we do have a report of a fire way out of the north end of Lenox Pocket Track. We've de-energized power on all tracks,
in the pocket. Track maintenance is en route. Safety's been notified. As it stands right now, we have reduced speed in both directions, so traffic is still getting through. The source and next steps will be reported when we determine.
Thank you, Thank you, Mr. Greenwood.
You're welcome.
At this time, Ms. O'Neill, are there any public comments for today?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have received 8 public comments. We have received comments from Garrett Klum, Walter Heap, Ben Dam, Kathy Woolard, George Heedy, Matthew Rao, Janae Shepherd, and Lawrence Miller. And all of these comments pertain to the Beltline projects, and they will all be forwarded to you after this meeting.
Thank you, Ms. O'Neill.
You're welcome.
At this time, may I have a motion for the approval of the March 11th, 2021 Board of Directors minutes?
So moved. This is Roberta.
I second Rita Hardage.
Thank you. Are there any abstentions from the vote or any no votes? Having heard none, the minutes from the March 11th, 2021 Board of Directors meeting is so passed. At this time, we are called for committee chair reports. The first chair report, of course, is from the External Relations Committee, Chairman Robert Ashe, and I will read his report. On behalf of the External Relations Committee Chair Robert Ashe, I submit the following report. The External Relations Committee met on Thursday, March 18th, and received the following briefings. Briefings on I-285 top end update and media impressions update. This concludes the report from the chair, Robert Ashe. Thank you. At this time, we will move to the audit committee.
I was muted. Madam Chair, the Audit Committee met on Thursday, March 18th, 2021, and approved the following resolution. Resolution authorizing a modification in contractual authorization for professional services for an internal audit GRC automation tool LOA L46790. I request approval of the resolution.
I'll second that. Jim Durrett.
In approval of the resolution, are there any no votes or any abstentions? Are there any no votes or any abstentions? Having heard none, the resolution is approved.
The committee received the following briefings: internal audit activity, cybersecurity update. Madam Chair, this concludes my report.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hardage. At this time, we will hear from the Planning and Capital Programs Committee, Mr. Pond.
Madam Chair, the Planning and Capital Programs Committee met on Thursday, March 25th, 2021, and approved the following resolutions. A, resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of electrical vehicle equipment, request for price proposal RFP P47634. B, resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposal for the fabrication and installation of a mosaic wall at the airport station. And C, resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the Beltline Light Rail Transit East Extension Concept Feasibility Study RFP P48439. I request approval of the resolutions.
And I'll second it.
Thank you. Having heard the first and second requests of approval for the following resolutions as read, are there any no votes or are there any abstentions? Are there any no votes or are there any abstentions? Having heard none, the resolutions are passed.
The committee received the following briefing, bus network redesign update. Madam Chair, this concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Pond. At this time, we will hear from the Operations and Safety Committee, Mr. Worthy.
Madam Chair, the Operations and Safety Committee met on Thursday, March 25th, 2021, and approved the following resolution. I'm sorry, I have the wrong document. Thank you. Approve the following resolution. A, resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of eligibility assessment services for MARTA Mobility, RFP P46866. I respectfully request approval of this resolution.
Second, Roberta.
Thank you. Are there any abstentions from the resolution or any no votes from the passing of the resolution? Are there any abstentions or any no votes? Having heard none, the resolution has passed.
The committee received the following briefings. B, 2002 ADA court order update. C, bus transportation key performance indicators. Madam Chair, this concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Worthy. At this time, we will hear from the Business Management Committee, Mr. Frierson.
Madam Chair, the Business Management Committee met on Thursday, 25th, 2021, and approved the following resolution. The resolution authorizing the solicitation of procurement proposals for the procurement of property and casualty insurance brokerage, RFP P48464. I request approval of this resolution.
Hardage, I second.
Thank you, Ms. Hardage. Having heard the request for the resolution, are there any no votes or any abstentions? Are there any no votes or any abstentions? Having heard none, the resolution has passed.
Madam Chair, this concludes my.
Thank you, Mr. Frierson. Are there any other matters to come before the board? Are there any other matters to come before the board? Having heard none, are there any comments from the board? No comments from the board? At this time, our April 8th Board of Directors meeting is concluded and therefore adjourned.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.